Well, thank you so much. And a warm welcome for everyone, everyone who's joined the call today, especially to our guest of honor, Prof. Pakeng, who has graced us with her time today. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone that's on the call today, especially the BMF leadership that's on the call, and the curator of the series, Ms. Ibuekhwai. Also, some of the BMF members that are on today, friends of the BMF and guests in general that have decided they are interested in the topic. I really hope you find value in the session. Again, the conversation is termed a fireside chat. And those of you who had the opportunity to grow up in a village and were able to sit around a fire where stories are told, where conversation can be anecdotal, but also structured at the same time. It's a fun conversation, but it's also a session where we're able to share insights. And so the session, again, was curated by the BMF Women Gender Desk, Gauteng province. And the aim is to sit down with a female leader in business, politics, and academia. And today we are specifically focusing on a strong woman lead in the academia space. The women that we conversed with in the series are women that have been carefully selected to address prescribed topics about a field that they're in and then the field that they operate in. And of course, I think given that today we're going to be speaking about academia, we understand that it may not just apply to academia, but we can see how we can also have some of the insights filtrate into business, society, and some of the sectors that you find yourselves in. So we will use this opportunity to learn from our guests today and hear some of their ideas in terms of how we can create cultures of belonging. So in that, please help me welcome Prof. Pakeng. Prof. Pakeng is a professor of mathematics in education and vice chancellor of the University of Cape Town. She holds a PhD in mathematics education from the University of Witwatersrand and has published over 80 reviewed articles and 5 edited volumes. She is a B1 NRF rated scientist, which indicates that she's considerable. She has considerable international recognition, and in that front has been invited to multiple international universities and also some of our African universities to come speak. She has received several awards, and 2 of them worth noting was the Order of the Baobab, Silver, bestowed upon her by President Cyril, the President of South Africa in 2016, and also CEO Magazine made her the most influential woman in academia in 2015. She currently, apart from her role as Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town, she serves as a trustee at the First Rand Foundation and a member of the board of the Oprah Winfrey Academy for Girls. Prof. Pakeng, a very special welcome to you. Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind invitation and introduction.
Awesome.
It feels so lonely. It's like there's nobody, it's just you and I.
What do you mean it's just, what do you mean it's just you and I?
It feels lonely that it's like, because we don't see anyone, so I just see you, so.
I see. I mean, would you prefer to see people? We can ask. Hi, Paul.
Hi, I've decided to join so that you are less lonely. There's one more person, Prof. Hi, to
Yeah, so some of our members, Prof, are working from home, so they might not be prepared like me and you to join in video, but certainly we welcome everyone's contribution tonight and hope that you guys will be asking questions and contributing to the conversation. Prof, I also noted that it is your birthday month, so happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I saw your students threw you a party on Instagram, which was quite interesting. Yeah. So how have you been? So how's your day? I understand that you start your day around 4 a.m., if not 3.
Well, I get up at 3, and so I'm at home. I'm working from home as well. So this is my home office, and I've been sitting here since 5 o'clock.
Mhm.
I mean, it could be earlier, but I also go very slow from 3 o'clock
Yeah.
with all the routine that I do, meditation and listening to my sermon. And I just go slowly in the morning. So I started,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great to hear. So, Paul, I'll just hand it to you to do the official opening, and then I'll go into Prof.
Thank you, Prof. My name is Mpho Seki. I am the chairperson of BMF Gauteng. My task today is really to just welcome you and just say a few words. I think I'm really, really excited. I'm really nervous because I'm a follower of the 3 a.m. squad. So really excited to have you on board. I think for me, part of the BMF mission was really around creating managerial structures and processes that reflect demographic. And so for us, the topic around creating cultures of inclusion is really a topic that is part of what we try to do in our daily lives as BMF members. And I mean, I looked at the topic, cultures and inclusion in itself. They're quite big words, but it's quite fitting, Prof, because you're an academic, right? I'm sure you've already broken it down pieces, and you've got your first hypothesis and your second hypothesis. So we're really looking forward to that. But I mean, when I looked up what inclusion really is, and in a sense that we would use in the BMF is around creating equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized. I mean, the history of our country tells us that people who look like um,
You keep breaking, so I'm not hearing.
breaking.
Yeah, every second word I miss.
Oh, really? Wow. Is this better, Prof?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try. I'm about to finish in any case. So in any case, I was saying that the topic in itself is quite meaty in terms of if you just break it down. But I looked up what inclusion is in the sense that we would use it in BMF, and it's really around equal opportunities for people who have and of resources for people who would have otherwise been marginalized. And with the history of our country, people who look like you and me have been marginalized. And if you think about culture in itself, Prof, I mean, there's different views in terms of how long it takes to change a culture. And I know certainly in most of the texts that I read, it says it takes at least a generation to change a culture. And I look at the institution which you are heading, over 190 years old. So it's really a big task, but I think you are equal to the task in terms of just in that organization changing and working to create cultures of inclusion. So we really, really welcome you, and we are looking forward to your input. We are certainly going to take lessons out of it as BMF, as an organization that is quite young compared to the one that you are leading, just over 45 years old, but certainly that it lessons in terms of inclusion is specifically around women. So with those few words, Prof, welcome and thank you for really coming to share with us.
Thanks very much, Mpho. Thanks for the warm welcome. You are muted, Togo.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mpho. And I think you're raising very good points when you say the BMF could not have selected a better person to have this conversation with, because Prof, you're not only tasked with ensuring that there is inclusion in the institution that you're in, but there's also inclusion for women in the institution that you're in, seeing that you are the first Black female vice chancellor at UCT itself. So before we kick off, I wanted us to maybe break down the topic itself as an exam question and see how you understand the topic creating cultures of belonging. And we can break it down to creating and what does culture mean in the context of academics, and also what inclusion means in the context of academics. So what is your understanding of the topic at hand today?
Yeah, thanks very much, Toko. I mean, it feels like an oral exam, the way you're putting it, you know, like now we're going to ask you the meaning of each concept. so I thought creating a culture of belonging in academia means addressing the traditionally white, male, Western culture in which academia has grown over centuries. So when we talk about inclusion, then it would be inclusion in terms of everyone who was excluded in that traditional white male Western culture or in academia. But it's also about what is taught, how it is taught, why it is taught. Because belonging is not only about, in an academic space, it's not only about who we are, it's also about who we are becoming, and who we are becoming is shaped by the knowledge space, because we are a place of ideas. So in terms of what knowledge are we foregrounding, are we exposing our students to, but also ways of teaching and learning, because even those have been shaped by Western culture and masculinity and whiteness, really. So thinking about a culture of belonging would go to that extent as well.
Yeah, so that's such a great point, and I love how you raised the point of the influences of what has been taught, because there's history around that, and the institution itself, not focusing too much on the institution, though, just generally broadly around education itself. I remember when I was in primary school, I never even got time to learn about the history of South Africa that much. And it's only now that I'm getting older where I'm starting to learn about the history of South Africa or about the history of the continent. And some of the stuff that I was taught really doesn't really speak to who I am as an African woman, etc. And so speaking of...
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about the history, because the history of South Africa not being taught, you not being taught it. I mean, of course, I grew up much earlier than you, and it was during apartheid. And of course, I grew up in an area where the homeland system happened to us. So we were in Bophuthatswana. But even, I'm thinking even before the homeland system, or not, the homeland system was in the schools, and I'm talking in primary, middle school, I think I was in middle school, there was a subject, there was history. I mean, it's interesting what was taught in history, and I didn't do much history. I only did it up to grade 9. And then there was a subject called civics. Civics was really about our place, our area. And I'm going to history because sometimes we think history is innocent. History is so not innocent, like getting to know about who we are. So in civics, they were teaching us about the leaders of the homelands. Who are they? They were not telling us why we had homelands. They were teaching us also about what it means to be a citizen. I think those were important. What it means to be a citizen, how do you relate to the flag, and what a national anthem, why countries need national anthems, and how do you behave when a national anthem is sung, and why do we do that? And it was like things like those, but they sort of kept these homelands as if these are things that were supposed to be. And I always say history, when we talk about history, we always have to ask, whose history? Because even the history that we might say we should teach our students, or African history, or even South African history, it really will depend who tells it, who's written, who's crafted it. And history is never innocent. It's so yeah, it's not innocent at all. So it's always interesting to yeah, knowledge is not innocent. I mean, not benign at all. It doesn't matter what it is. It's always influenced by whoever crafted it.
Yeah. And going back to history and your history and how you grew up in the area that you grew up, in the time that you grew up, what would you say has influenced you the most around the thinking about diversity, inclusion, as well as how you create cultures of belonging for other people that are like you, that come from the same area, same background as you?
I mean, you know, I grew up in a family that wasn't very wealthy. I mean, I'm sure you all know that my mom started as a domestic worker. She worked in the factories in Roslyn, already married to my dad, went back to school to do standard 5 after having 3 children. So throughout her life, she was studying. When I got my PhD, she got her degree through Vista. I think through Vista at that time. Those of you who remember Vista, distance education. But the one thing that that talks to creating a culture of belonging is that, and it didn't happen only at my home. I mean, many families did this. There were always people at home. I mean, we lived in a 4-room in Garangua, but there was never a time where it was just the 3 of us and our parents. There was always an uncle who stays with us, or 2, and some people slept in the dining room, and you know, in the bedroom you slept 3 of you. There's always someone staying, and I mean, I always say to my sister, how lucky were we that we had all these uncles staying with us. Never once were we actually abused. I mean, it's great, right? I mean, you can't take a risk like that, but yeah, that's it. But the other thing is that besides, I mean, there were uncles, there were whatever. There was some year when I went to university. I think I was doing first year at university. My parents took in a child who was going to school, because my mother ended up teaching at this primary school. And there was this child who came, at that time, many families moved their boy children from townships to rural areas. But of course, in other townships, there was this idea that if Soweto is a bit rough, take them to a quieter township. So they took their son to Garangua. He comes from Soweto. They took him to Garangua, but it's a distant relative. Those relatives were not taking care of him. He was sleeping outside. My mother brought him home, and he became our brother. Of course, we related to the family. But it's interesting. He's not our family. He's now our family. He's not our blood relative, but he's now family. He came, he was 11. And now he's an engineer. He's married to a physician, medical doctor who's a physician. You know, he grew up at home. He got married at home. His mother is like our aunt. He's got 2 mothers. But it's an interesting thing that used to happen. And I think this is an idea of creating a culture of belonging in communities, because belonging is not only, this culture of belonging is not only needed in professional spaces. I mean, it's needed across the socio-economic lines. I mean, it doesn't matter how poor we are or you are. I mean, there are other people who are poorer. We were living in a 4-room. We were poor, but there were people who were poorer, and you help as much as you can. So sometimes I think that's something that we are losing in our townships. That's a shame. And I think even for us as professionals, I mean, I think, you know, I don't know about you, but I feel a burden that having gotten here, I didn't get here on my own, and I've got to make sure that other people, I hold other people's hands to get here. So I often think every professional should just adopt one child. You don't have to stay with them, just pay for their fees, just take care of them, just buy them clothes once, you know, and I have felt that forever, and so you know, I have only given birth to 1 child, but I've got 3. And then there are many other students that I help at a distance. But the three are like at home. These are the people who take care of everyone, just like everything, fees, food, clothes, and everything. And I think that's part of a culture of belonging. In the workspace, of course, it's a different, it's a similar kind of thing. You can do it differently, and we can talk about the different ways of creating a culture of belonging. But I don't think it starts in the workplace. I think it starts out there in the community, and and we can grow it in the workspace as well.
Yeah, I think what you touched on is brilliant, because you touched on community, you touched on family, you touched on sharing, right?
Yeah.
The point of adopting someone is also something that I think can be practically used in the formal space as well. So I think there's a lot of things in how you were raised that certainly, and I think a lot of people on the call, how they were raised, that certainly speak to creating of cultures of belonging for other people as well. Now, from your experience, Prof, I think I want to spend this segment trying to, first of all, getting your experience, because you've kind of been an outlier a lot of the times.
Disruptor. A disruptor.
Disruptor. Yes.
Don't do anything. It's like things get disrupted when I show up. I mean, it's quite hectic.
That's good. So I want to take the opportunity to kind of understand your experiences and how you felt, and also want to encourage the participants to ask questions and contribute to the discussion if they've got anything else to say. But from your experience and in your career, do you have a time where you kind of felt like you did not belong? Where
Oh yeah,
I'm about that.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I unlike you guys, I mean, I went to school. First of all, I went to 7 different schools in 12 years of basic education.
Jeez, yeah.
All of the schools were either village or township.
Mm.
So when I went to university, my English was so bad. I mean, and the first thing when you get to university, you realize other people have had a better exposure. I mean, of course, it was 1983, 84. So I wasn't alone. There were several other people, but you wouldn't speak much in class. You wouldn't speak at the mass meeting. People would speak, whatever. I would just keep quiet. I mean, that's when you feel I'm lesser than.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, because when I look back, I keep thinking, where did I get the confidence? And I think I have always felt I've got to find something that makes me stand out.
Mm-hmm.
So these other students were fluent or whatever. I used to sit at the cafeteria, write theorems on my school bag, on my jeans, and I was boasting that I'm doing maths, and not everybody can do it. I mean, like I just felt they can do that. I can do something that they can't do. I mean, it just a sense of confidence for myself. When I went to vets, it was worse. I mean, I went to vets for my honors. I mean, that was hectic. First of all, it was the first time I'm in class with white people. It was 1989. So it was like at the height of student protest at universities. I mean, it was hectic, right? And here I am, I'm the only black chick in the maths honors class. There were 2 other black guys. The rest, there were white women. It was a small class. I can't remember, we were 11 or whatever. And you feel, I mean, there I felt like I don't belong. My English had improved, but it was still not good enough. My way of being, my culture in the class, I would raise my hands. None of these people raised hands. People just spoke. People just spoke. When the lecture ends, they go to the lecture, they chat to the lecturer. I'm like, what? Like, I came from a black university. We didn't do that. I spent the whole entire 6 months not saying anything, right? And I always say to people, I got corrupted at this, because then I learned they pause, you speak. They say 1, you say 15. Like, I learned to make my voice heard at Vets, right? But the other thing that you don't realize, I mean, how different places are. I mean, moving from University of Uputatswana to Wits University, even the protests were different. I mean, those were the days when there was still Glenn Thomas House. I mean, if you're as old as I am, and the notices for the meetings and whatever would be everywhere, even on the paving. It wouldn't happen where I came from, that you have notices meetings on the paving. You wouldn't have that. And there were times when there wasn't a protest, but there were meetings that would happen at lunchtime from 1 to 2, and then back to class. I'm like, what? When we have a mass meeting, it's forever. It's at night. It's never at lunchtime. It's only at lunchtime if it's a full-on protest. But then, of course, there were full-on protests, and sometimes, and they would go for a week. You're an honors student. It's a small class. There's lots of white people. If you go to the protest, they're in class. The lecture is continuing, in the midst of the tear gas. In the midst of the tear gas in the corridors, So it was very so how you get yourself in. I mean, I found it very hard. I had to learn, and nobody holds your hand at some in many of these spaces. But of course, the person who inspired me to go into academia, I met her during my honors year at Wits. And it's interesting that it was her way of interacting with us that attracted me to her. That I ended up working with her even in the master's and in the PhD. So it's interesting. What is it that draws you in? Sometimes it's what people do with you, it's what people say, what people invite you to, but it's also how people are. I mean, she's a white woman. Well, that's what lecturers were at that time, maybe white, but it was how she interacted with us that I almost felt like she takes me seriously. She thinks I know something. She thinks what I'm thinking is important, whereas other people didn't have the patience to listen because your English is not good enough. So and it felt like she was interested, and that made me feel like I've got something to say here. I've got something to offer here. So the cultures of belonging can be built in many different ways. And of course, I stayed at Wits I went as a student, did part-time, and I mean, I then came back as a lecturer and so on. But it's interesting, every step has got, I mean, you get into a different community of practice, let's call it. And every community of practice has got its own culture or ways of being. And in a way, you've got to be initiated into those and so on. But there's also something about cultures. I mean, I don't think people just have to be welcomed into the culture or initiated into the culture. I think sometimes it's important to disrupt the culture that you find, and you can only do that. At a particular level, it's easier to do that, or people who have much stronger personalities, you can do it, because it's quite it exposes you can get crashed, but I think it's important that certain, if we don't do that, then we encourage assimilation, and obviously, given our colonized past, assimilation is always assimilation to a Western culture. As it is. So and when I say Western culture, I mean if you grew up in the township, it is colonial, but it's colonial in a particular way. It's shaped by coloniality and so on. But it's in a particular way. There's ways that are different. So I think you can disrupt cultures. You can disrupt traditions. And I've always, when I say to people, when I became Vice Chancellor at the University of Cape Town, I got into office, and of course I had been DVC for a year or 18 months. And of course, I found the place brutal. I mean, the place is brutal, right? I mean, So I thought, what is colonial about this office? That I don't, what is colonial about here? And that I can resist now, just at the beginning, you know, and not having an inauguration was one of those things that said, this is colonial. Why should we even parade and you make speeches about me? I don't want that. And I will do something about that, in a way that my community and my values, that's how, you know, that's how we would do things. That's how we would spend the money. We wouldn't just spend money on ourselves. You'd share it with other people. And so it was also a way of, you know, disrupting this, which is colonial.
Reconstructing the culture that you found there.
Yes, yes. And someone said to me, one of my colleagues said to me, gosh, you broke the walls of the VC's office, you know, like it's just accessible, like people just, you know.
Yeah.
And why not? I mean, it's you know, some people feel comfortable about it, some people don't, but it doesn't mean when you get into office, you always have to just be the office. You can shape the office. Yeah, so I think in this period, particularly now, whilst we really have to transform, decolonize, it's even more important to disrupt cultures. And so when we think about belonging, we've got to think about what is that belonging to.
And so when you got to you obviously started as deputy vice chancellor, right? So you kind of got to see how it is like in that office, and then you then became the vice chancellor of the institution. I think what I would like to know is when you then started to deconstruct and break down the norms and the cultures in that office, and how students relate to that office, and accessibility, like you say. What were some of the challenges that you were met with, and how do you deal with those challenges? I ask that question because a lot of people in the professional space are met with similar challenges in corporate, in the NGO space, in media, etc. So how do you deal with those challenges when you find them, when you're trying to break down a culture so you can have a more inclusive culture, a more diverse culture, a culture that wants people to show up as who they are?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing is that there are things that I don't listen to. I mean, so I mean, the one thing that I had to explain was, if we are not having an inauguration, how am I going to make sure that the benefits of the inauguration, we can get them without an inauguration?
Okay.
And so I thought, what are the benefits? I mean, the benefits is you invite people, probably donors, and you want to showcase whatever. And I said, you know, what I plan to do, which is use the money to pay for the students who are OA who need to graduate. I mean, just that gesture will say to whoever is a potential donor, we are worth investing. If any donor thinks that that's not it because we didn't invite them to a party, then, I mean, really, maybe they shouldn't be with us. And I think that's what happened. I mean, it's not, people get to be introduced to a person in that inauguration, but it's not only what happens there, it's how you pull it off that also tells people who you are. I mean, there's been criticism. It's, you know, it's interesting also when you're a woman. I mean, for me, there's been also criticism about my being colorful, you know, like,
I've seen that.
you know, and I don't think it's just an academic thing. I mean, I think it's a Cape Town thing. I think maybe it's a UCT thing. I don't know. People don't necessarily wear bright colors like you know, like, and I keep saying in Gauteng we probably do this more, but you know, yeah, it's the colorfulness, the big earrings, the whatever. I mean, even my hair drew attention. I mean, I had an afro. I mean, and I, of course, it was a little bigger than this, not too big, but, I mean, I was surprised. I mean, can you imagine that even in a 360 evaluation, people wrote about my hair?
Seriously.
Yes! Crazy! The weird world!
What?
Yes!
That's
In a
unbelievable.
bloody university!
Why? What was the hair obstructing the view like in Pretoria? What?
I mean, no, because it's afro, it's a kinky hair, and of course, students would ask me, "Is this deliberate?" And I would say, "Yes, it's deliberate." And of course, I mean, the more questions I got, the more I kept it. You know that I didn't braid it. You know, but after the 360, I had, you have to respond to what are you gonna do about this? So I wrote that I will start plaiting my hair, but you must know that this is not sustainable because my hairline is gonna, yeah. Then I went back to my beads. I mean, people would have noticed that I went back to my beads last year. I hadn't done a braid, and I mean, in Gauteng they know my beads, but I mean, it's an interesting thing. It looks trivial, but I mean, for me, it's yeah, and I mean, I can talk about it now. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I've got evidence of it. It will get into my book one day because it's insane. And then, of course, the dress that stopped the country from functioning. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Here I am for the first time. One of the things that I disrupted was the university had, recognition ceremonies for lower level staff, admin staff, and then they've got awards. And admin staff were recognized for service, like you spent 15 years at the university or 25 years, and then academics, it would be the award for the best teacher, the best researcher, whatever. It's like for performance, but for admin staff, it was for service, for loyalty. And the events were separate. There was the one day, whatever. So I said, no, I can't go to all these parties. Let's have one. We've got to, yes. And again, it's about a culture of belonging. So how do we make sure that a gardener, who has spent 20 years at the university, doesn't feel like they belong? How do we make sure that? So I said, we're going to have one award ceremony. All of us, it's going to be, we're going to have everyone on the table, knife and fork, everyone dress up. That's all. So we started that in my first year in office, right? In 2018. So just a few, that's the first event we had in. I wore a dress, such a lousy dress. I mean, I keep looking in my wardrobe and I'm like, this is the dress that made it to the newspaper. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe that. Why? Why? Because it showed a little bit of flesh there, and it's long, it's lousy. Frankly speaking, I wouldn't have worn it in Gauteng if it was an event in Gauteng. I wouldn't have. But anyway, it drew attention here. But it went on and on in the newspapers. Here's the thing. It was a distraction from the event. The fact that for the first time, here you have a vice chancellor who's bringing the community together, from the top academic to the cleaner, all together, recognized the same way, in the same, I mean, a particularly lower level staff, they felt affirmation that they've never felt in the university. But even the professors were happy. They were like, oh, when I got this award, it was like 5 people there. Nobody knew about it. A prof, I got it 2 years ago. Can we do it again? But what I'm saying is that because you're a woman, suddenly it's your dress that steals the show. I mean, it's weird. But anyway, yeah. So some of the things, it's stuff like that. But I mean, yeah. And I'm loud, right? I am loud.
Yeah.
I mean, hear people speak softly. Nobody laughs out loud,
And there's protocol to how you speak as well.
Yes.
You speak. You have to go in order of hierarchy and note this person and note that person.
I think people have questions. There are questions here.
Yeah. So Shiko says, unbelievable. The hair comment on the 360 discussion. Of course, I think that's unbelievable. Zizile says, wow, I'm thoroughly enjoying the conversation. Thank you. So Nolito says, it's a woman thing, Prof. Unfortunately, the default for women leaders is to find any fault to distract your vision. Your competence and track record speak for itself. And the next best thing is to attack you personally, which is true. Men are held to different standards. Patriarchy is institutional. And to create a culture of belonging, we need men to be our allies. That is such a brilliant point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
That we need men to be our allies in the work
But here's the thing, you know, the thing is that, and I agree with Nolita, but I always say when you get attacked personally, you must know that they cannot get you on the work. I always say there's two things, right? If I didn't know my job, they would attack me on that. They would show this is what she can do. If I stole money, if I were corrupt, they would show this is, she's corrupt. They would have no time to talk about personality, right?
Yeah.
If I were promiscuous, they would talk about that. I mean, have you noticed only women's relationships are talked about? I mean,
of course.
You know, here's the thing. I'm on a WhatsApp group, and if you recall, in the same year, Eskom had a new CEO, a white guy whose name I can't remember, and then Transnet had a new CEO who's a black woman. WhatsApp group, when the white man was appointed first, people are like, oh yes, whatever.
Yeah, yes.
Great, it's gonna be whatever. The woman, a few months later, the woman gets, I think it was 2 months even, it wasn't very long. She got appointed. One of the men on the WhatsApp group said, but she doesn't have experience in this. She was running her own business, a small business. And then someone said, oh, and was she not married to Brian Molefe? Brian Molefe was also CEO or whatever. And everybody keeps quiet. So then I wrote on the WhatsApp group and I said, excuse me, guys, I understand that you want to talk about her. Can we talk about the guy first? Because we just had the CEO of Eskom, who's not an engineer. He's not an engineer.
Yeah.
Nobody said he's not an engineer. How can he run Eskom? Nobody, right? We don't know how many times he got divorced and remarried. It's irrelevant. Now you're telling us about, and I said to them, no. Until we get to that discussion, we are not getting to this one.
Yeah, but I think it also takes women to also stop it, to stop other people from criticizing other women, because sometimes we are our own critiques as well, and I understand that men should be our allies. But I've also WhatsApp groups personally where a woman is talked about, and I'm like, but why would you say this about this? Speaking of the topic of women also being criticized, I mean, if, as an example, you have if it's rumored that a man is sleeping, a senior man is with a junior woman, they say she's looking for promotion, right? But you flip it the other way around, the woman is the more senior one and the man is the more junior one, they say that, oh no, she's using her power. So it's always a problem of the woman, and we are always the ones who are at fault. And back to your last point around people attacking who you are versus your work, and I think that's brilliant. And I probably think that's an indicator, like you say, that you are on the right path.
Nothing to point at. So they are clutching at intangibles.
Yes, 100%.
Things that you can't measure or whatever, because they can't get you anywhere, you know, I mean.
And Prof, in your role, now I'm just trying to help people here that are perhaps trying to push boundaries where they are. And that are not in a position of influence that you may be in at the current moment. But I understand that you also faced maybe some challenges and try to push back. So when you are in a space where you are not at the top, where you're number one, how do you challenge the culture without having career limiting moves?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I was talking to a young academic at UWC who reached out about that, who did a PhD and is worried about what career limiting moves. And I said to her, I mean, I think we are not the same. I mean, I think personality also counts. My strategy has been, I want to tick all the boxes when it comes to work. So I have always made sure that they can't catch me on the work, number one. Number two, I want to make sure that when I am not there, they miss me. Do you understand what I'm saying? They understand. When I'm in a space, I want to make sure that I do the work like to the top and cement myself in the way. I mean, they know that I add value here to an extent that when I'm not there, they miss me, right? I often thought, I have always thought as a young academic that buys you space. Okay. It buys you a voice, right? But thirdly, I think the important thing also is, what battles do you pick? You've got to choose your battles. And I think you also have to know what are you working towards. I mean, I can remember being at Vets and insisting that I was a newly qualified PhD, and I wanted to coordinate the postgraduate program. I was clear that I want to be an academic, and I knew that research, if you excel in research, whatever, that's the way to professorship, right? So I refused, and you can hate me as you like, Basadi Baton. I refused to serve in the transformation committee, in the teaching and learning committee. I said I want to serve in the research committee, and I want to coordinate the postgraduate program. And there was this thing that if you are Black, you must go to the transformation committee. And I think it's problematic. Transformation is not just a problem of Black people. White people must know that if you succeed with transformation, it's good for them too. And so I pursued other opportunities. Like I insisted on things like those. And I can remember being in a meeting and someone else, a white person, being, their name being put that so-and-so will coordinate the postgraduate program, and me saying, no, I want to do it. She doesn't have a PhD, I do. And of course, everyone looked, wow, sure. What does she think of herself? And I said, no. And I said to them, give me 1 year. If I don't do it well, you can take it.
Yeah.
And I knew I'd kill it, right?
Yeah.
And my only reason was I have got a PhD, she doesn't. So I deserve the opportunity. But when they gave me the opportunity, I did a good job of it. And so they didn't move the coordination. So, and what I'm saying is, I think when you are junior, you've got to first of all, buy yourself, think about what cementing yourself looks like. And I think it's about doing your work and being resourceful in the office beyond your work. Be that girl that they want to go to. They know that things are going to happen, right? I think it buys you. And then be clear about what is it. You're not going to be going around fighting all the fights for everybody. No. You can't do that when you're junior. You must choose your fights. You'll get to a stage where you'll take other fights. I think it's suicidal to think as a junior you can fix everything. Choose the fights, choose how you do it, and you'll get to the level. Because you also need your seniors who are there to support you.
Yeah.
You want sponsors. You want sponsors around. So you don't want to be bashing around everywhere. As you go higher, it buys you more voice. I mean, there are things that I challenged, more things I challenged as I was going higher. Like you know, I was directing a center at Vets, and I remember one white professor refusing to report to me. I was like, I raised the money. You are being paid with the money that I raised. You don't want to report to me. Who do you want to report to? And they want to report to the head of school who doesn't have a PhD. Excuse me? Like, I called all of them, like, excuse me. And the head of school said, no, but you can't report to me. You've got to report to her, you know, because that's just what it is. But you can't challenge those things if you are too junior. You can't. You've got to buy yourself time.
First.
Yeah.
I think that is actually quite valuable insight, because we arrive in the spaces that we're in and we see the situation and we're like, okay, I obviously have to change this dynamic and not for myself, but also for others that are around me. And then you become that vocal person, and then you see your career not moving fast enough. But what you're saying is that cement yourself first, grounding, be resourceful, almost indispensable, really.
Yes.
Yes. And again, when they see that you've got that fire and that passion for inclusivity and diversity, you don't have to be that person leading it at the detriment of other stuff. You can support it, and if you want to lead it, you can. But you mustn't be forced. You mustn't feel forced to be the person that's driving that. But in fact, you should try find pieces of work or projects or stuff that actually has quite impact in the space that you're in. I mean, I guess also then grows your voice in the organization that you're in and entrenches you in the organization that you're in. Puleng says, thank you for being authentic, real, and bullish about who you are. And that's it, when that's where everything starts. Grace says, thank you, Prof. It is such an aha moment because we often get assigned things because of our race, because we are women. I will be choosing my fights much more wisely going forward. I think that's quite important as well. You can't fight every single fight. You have to choose the ones that are important to you. And Piwa says, great advice on managing career limiting moves.
Yeah.
And when
there's other people who are asking questions on the Q&A.
On the Q&A, okay.
Yeah, I see Tandeka's question.
Seeing the comments on the chat.
Q&A is at the bottom right. Let's see.
I see.
There's more questions actually.
There's a lot. Sorry, I never see that there's a lot of questions there. So let's start at the top. Okay, so this one speaks to the question around the type of content that is taught, and says if you were to change the curriculum in schools, what would you focus on, add or remove?
Oh, wow. I think I would say students must take 2 languages. They don't have to take 3. They just take 2. And one of the 2 must be an African language.
Yes.
Because at the moment, there's this thing in between, So I'll just say one of the 2 must be an African language. I'll do that. That would create a space for another subject, if you know what I mean. And perhaps in that space of another subject, I would probably introduce something about African studies or African histories. That something that just doesn't focus here, but that teaches children about the history of our continent.
That's critical.
How did it come that we are here,
Yeah. Can I add to that and say why that's important? Because you get to learn that you're normal.
Yes.
That there's nothing wrong with you.
Yes.
In fact, you actually then become more of who you are. When you realize, there's actually other people like me. This is why I am like this, because actually this is how we are as Africans. This is how other cultures are. There's a question here, it's a statement that says from Leroy that says, I agree with adopting one student that would help, that would make significant change, and that's quite important. How do you remain resilient? I'm struggling, trying to sustain the breaking down or disrupting of the culture that I am in as a young Black female in technical male-dominated industry. I love my job, but hate the culture and work dynamics. I think a lot of people could probably relate to that.
Okay, yes. I'm trying to see the question. What do you do with the questions now? Okay, I see it there. I think there's different ways to, I wish I knew what area it is, because of course academia is male dominated, especially the areas that I have practiced in. And I think the question would be similar to the one of choosing your battles, and so that you don't destroy yourself. I mean, I think you don't want to destroy yourself. You want to have allies. You want to be able to have the strength. There are things that I don't fight, that because I just don't have the strength to fight everything. And as I said, I mean, and you do get criticism for making those choices sometimes. But I believe you make choices about what you can fight in the culture and what you can fight alone, because certain things, there are many things that you can't fight alone. You have to fight them with other people. You have to use institutional mechanisms, processes, and policies to challenge them. And I think it's important to do that, because otherwise you will self-destruct, and I don't think that's a smart move. I would do that, and I would infiltrate the men. When I was at Vets, there were so few of us when I started as a Black person, and the few Black people who were there wanted to keep to themselves. And I would say, yeah, no, I talk to them, they're friends, but I would sit there in the middle of the white people. I want to hear, what are they saying? Where are they going? Yeah.
You also want to be invited to
with them. Yeah, you must be friends with them, work with, so that you know. You can't antagonize. So even with the men, you hang out with them, so that you get, otherwise they'll never be your ally, hang out with them, get to know who they are. Of course, the space is dominated by them, but you want to be able to get to know how you're not becoming one of them, but you educating yourself about them. I would say that. I think there isn't just one strategy. I think it's you've got to be, but more than anything, you've got to be smart. And things will happen. Things sometimes things will go wrong. And I often say, things go wrong, forgive yourself, and stand up, look up, and keep going. Everyone else will keep reminding you what went wrong. That's their problem. There's more to achieve ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's this thing about in a boardroom where there's 10 people and you're the only Black person, right? Yeah. And if you don't invite other people, like you're saying, you found that people weren't inviting. If you don't invite other people, whenever the decision that needs to be made, you are actually 1 against 9. Yeah. But if you create another seat for someone like you, now it's against it, and not necessarily the against thing, but someone like you probably thinks similar to you. So it's better, it would be easier to pass something through when you've got like-minded people. If you create a third seat, it's 3 against 7. So it becomes easier for you. So it's actually quite self-serving to create spaces for other people as opposed to keeping them for yourself.
I think at some stage we've got to talk about Blackness matters. Women matters. But it doesn't solve everything. There's also ideology.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there is a lot of envy, and therefore sometimes what comes in your way looks like you. So there are other things that matter. So people who haven't achieved what you achieved, even if they look like you, if they have envy, you can forget it, because they think they deserve that. And for some reason, they've got to find the reason why you shouldn't be getting. Some people don't say, wow, one of us got it. Let's get on with it. You know, so I know it's controversial. The one thing that I always say is, I will not fight with a black person in public.
Yes.
That's my principle, right? I will not fight with a black person in public, but I don't want to make a mistake of thinking all of them want me to succeed. Because in my journey, I know that some of them don't. And that's the sad reality. I mean, I remember Felicia Mabuza Sato used to talk a lot about this pull head down syndrome. It is there, guys. I mean, we shouldn't lie to ourselves. It is there among women, among black people. And I often say it is where you know, where success and achievement is not the norm, envy abounds.
Yeah.
Because few people who get it, you know.
Sure.
But we can talk about that another time.
No, I think let's because some of the questions actually we have touched on in as part of our discussion. So I think we can move to the topic around societal norms and cultures that we find ourselves in. And so the question is, what are some of those cultural norms and expectations that are barriers to creating belonging for other people, or some of the things that stop us from making others or making or having us feeling welcomed in spaces, or so what are those barriers that you have confronted or that you see, and again, how can we work to bring down those barriers?
You mean not in the professional space, in society?
So I mean, I think we can touch on everything, but in the space that you're in, what have you found to be some of the barriers to inclusion and such?
I mean, the barriers can be class, they can be racial. Yeah, I don't know what else. I don't know what I mean, in the professional space, but also, I mean, the thing about I don't know, clubbing against somebody is such a big thing that happens easily in professional spaces, you know.
Yeah, some of the ones that I have here, of course, are being female, being a disabled individual. And so if you have some form of disability, people look at you and they think you are incapable.
Yes.
Duality, and if you don't prescribe to normal heterosexual norms in society, you can be ostracized. There's also religion as well. Your class, like you say, the one I want to touch on is language.
Yeah.
Because you did speak about English and the whole thing of you not growing up in a society where people speak English a lot, and then it becomes a challenge. I mean, for us, I mean, sometimes in corporate, even when I type emails, I'm like, this doesn't sound right. Or if I have to speak off the cuff, the English is not so great. And language being such an important thing for us that creates belonging. That makes us feel like we are welcomed, because we are able to communicate better if we speak in our own language, or if we feel comfortable speaking a specific language. how do you think language can be integrated better in spaces and culturally in organizations to make people feel welcome and to make them feel like they belong?
I mean, Thokozile, you know, the issue of language is an interesting one because it's not just about language. It's and by the way, what makes the issue of language big is not even the native speakers of the language. It is us, Black people. You know, sometimes we just make white people the scapegoat. It is us who are laughing at Penny that his English is not good enough. When he has a program that you can't even have.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, it's an interesting thing. And I just think it's not even so much, it is so much about us as Black people accepting who we are, being comfortable within who we are, that we don't think that we have to, you know, you have to be sound, behave like Caucasians to show that you are educated or you have arrived. I mean, even in the township, when a child speaks English, it's like everybody cycles around. No, they call the neighbors, to the one who doesn't, you know. So I think these things start from there. It doesn't start from. I mean, if I make an error, a linguistic error, it'll be you talking about me. You, the Model C kids. Yes, it'll be you. Not. And actually, if white people do that, I say to them, oh, what are you laughing at when you speak 2 languages only? I speak 9. Get out of here. But what do I say to you? What do I say to you? You know, so I think part of what we have to work on ourselves. I mean, there's something that colonization and apartheid did to us. That's big, you know. It is the same thing that breeds envy and jealousy. It is the same thing that breaks the pull your head down. It is the same thing that makes us not support one another in the boardroom.
Yes. So when you say there's a lot of things that apartheid, colonization have done to us, what do you think those things are?
Self-hate breeds many things.
What we're speaking about today.
Well, you see, I mean, that's what I said, a culture of belonging to what? All right. And I said in my space, it's about addressing the traditional white male Western culture. Which means then you are saying this should not be the norm.
Of course.
Okay, so when you say creating a culture of belonging, we should also say belonging to what?
Yeah.
If I have to be part of these posh kids who speak whatever, I mean, the belonging to what matters.
Yeah, and I think that's something that every organization, I guess, create for itself, because in every organization there are values and practices, and I guess things that they aim for in terms of culture, right? And that needs to be defined and communicated well. Otherwise, then it's okay to speak Afrikaans in a meeting.
Yes.
Because it was not communicated that being able to respect each other as colleagues and communicate efficiently is part of culture, or making sure that someone is not fitting in, not trying to fit in, but belong, is not part of the culture. Nosizo says, amen, amen. I often say to people who tell me my English is weak, I tell them that English does not solve problems. That is
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Rama says envy and jealousy among Black community is such a threat to all of our advancement. There is such a potent inability to celebrate each other's wins. We love to be tokens in a room instead of understanding that we are there to release a ladder for each other. 100% correct there. Yeah.
But you know, there's also an expectation. I can see Mulokadi asked the question, in what other ways are you championing women at UCT being unapologetically themselves without fear of worrying about fitting into the so-called culture of the institution, which itself is undergoing massive changes, blah, blah. I mean, if you've been watching, you know that the first project that I launched, the first initiative I launched when I took office was a hashtag for women by women. And that's research that's done by women in areas where women are in short supply. And secondly, research that's done by women, about issues that affect women. And with those, within those research, we also made available funds for those researchers to only get women students, women research assistants, so that as they do this research, they're also mentoring women postgraduate students. That was the first program that I did. But here's the thing about when you're a woman leader, you know, there's an expectation. Okay, so there's an expectation at institutional level, at country level, and for some people at individual level. So there are individuals who are not happy with me because I haven't done anything for them personally.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that I donate 10% of my salary to fund Black women postgraduate students. We are selecting the second group this year. Last year we took 2, we're taking another 2 this year. It's irrelevant for them. Why? Because I haven't done something personal. People are brave. The person writes me on WhatsApp and say, you are so bloody self-centered. You're only taking care of yourself. You haven't even done anything for me. I mean, it's weird. And so that is not jealousy towards me. It's jealousy to the people who are benefiting from the many things that I'm doing. That the person is saying, but I'm not. And I'm like, but you are a senior professor. Other people, yeah, I mean, so there's something here that we've got to get out of our own self-serving ideas, that if it doesn't serve you, then it means that leader is not championing Black women. We leadership. I'm not here to just look at one person. That one, if Togo is happy, then everything is fine. That's not what it is. So, and by the way, here's the thing: a white man doesn't have this kind of pressure. I must change these things that happened for hundreds of years, and I must change them last month.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
And I must also make sure that each one of you Black people get something, tangible, so that you can say, I've done something for you. A white man doesn't have to do that. And so what they do, they can focus on the vision, the institution, and they can do that. Me, I'm dragged by you. I can't even sleep properly because I have to, so there's something we're doing to ourselves. We are self-destructing. And I think we make our leaders, our women leaders, Black women leaders, we treat them too much like superwomen to an extent that we're disabling them. I think there's got to be some...
That is true, Prof. Also, I want to ask you then, is it fair to expect, I mean, I guess for you, you naturally are doing things in your space to transform and include others in your work, and make sure that you have people, you pull up other people that would not necessarily have the opportunity. So would you say then that it is fair where you have someone who is a Black woman, as an example, entering a space of leadership, is it fair to expect them to pull up other people? Or is that something that we should not even interfere and think that they should do?
It is fair. It is fair.
Okay.
What's different is what do you mean by pulling up other people? What will that look like for you?
So, as an example, are they doing? Are they creating empowering opportunities for other people? As an example, like mentoring younger people, making sure that the people that report to them if it wasn't a diverse team, it starts looking diverse, as an example. Gaps, addressing that for Black women, as an example, because we know that we are the least paid. Promotions that people had not been getting previously. Those types of initiatives.
I think it's fair, but I wouldn't put too much pressure on them that I don't put on white men.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is fair to expect, because there's a thing that people expect, that because they think you know what's the problem.
Yeah.
So get on and solve it. But remember, the establishment also expect, there's an extra, you are hired to do a job here, not just to pull up women. Okay?
Yes.
You're hired to do a job.
Yes.
So the job must be done. All right. And then you pull up women. There's also Black people who are not women who also need to be pulled up.
Yes.
So you try to do all of that. It won't be possible that individuals at a personal level will feel pulling up.
Of course.
But at an institutional level, you can develop a culture that's affirming for women.
Yeah.
And the thing is that even if you do that, let me tell you, when I got into office, the big opportunity that I had was to appoint deans, because at the level of DVCs, positions were filled. It's at the level of deans that positions were vacant. There were only 2 deans out of 8 that were substantially appointed. One committed suicide within 27 days of me being in office, and so there was only 1 dean. And that was a woman dean of engineering, the only woman of engineering in the country. There's no other, right? Now, I had 7 positions to fill. There's still 1 that's vacant. And the reason why it's still vacant and we have an interim person is because when we advertised, we couldn't get a Black person. And I felt it's better to wait 2 years. Let's mentor people. Let's get people ready. That's not just 1 person. Let's get people ready, at least 3 people. And then they compete, right? So there's a 1. Now, and then you have 6. Out of these 6, there is no white person who was appointed, and there is only 2 men. The rest are women. Is the country writing about it? No. Why? Because we are still struggling to transform our professoriate. So until I get 50 professors at once, they are not going to write about this. Can you see? So you must, but this is worth celebrating. Go to Stellenbosch, go to Wits, go to UP. Tell me if you have the same. And what I'm saying is the first in the history of the university that you have so many women at the dean's level. Oh no, we've got 1. The business school is a white woman we appointed, yeah. So out of these, the 2 are men. This one is white woman, and it's the only woman who's running a business school in the country. We've got the only woman who's running engineering in the country. They are both white, and the rest of the people are Black, 2 are men. But you don't get that. You don't get a deanship out of 8, 5 are Black, out of 7, 5 are black, 2 are white. You don't get that in the.
Not in this day and age.
It's never happened in this university.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying, where you're saying, but if the candidate is not, so you earmark a position, right? And you say, I want to allocate it to this type of individual. If you don't find the person, you say, I'm going to hold the position for that person while I try to find or upskill, or not upskill, but develop the right person. And it's also one person, it's 3 because people need to compete for the role at the same time, which is, I think, something that a lot of organizations don't do, right?
Yeah.
There's succession planning. So I think that's quite insightful. Utulelo says, great job. I love Prof spoke about the experience at VIS. Oftentimes we do get this feeling of imposter syndrome, which is,
everybody's got it. Everybody. I remember Oprah saying, everyone she has interviewed. At the end of the interview says, was I okay? And she says, even Beyonce did it.
Imagine.
Everybody got it. So, get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, if someone like Beyonce says that, right? She's at the top of her game. What does it say about our culture, right? Even one of the most influential people in the world. Nosipo says, true, TK, we as women need to call out negative talk against other women, 100%. Anonymous says, if you criticize or disrupt, you often get alienated. How do you handle the alienation, intentional exclusion?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, sometimes, by the way, I look and say, I could have done that differently. I correct myself. I could have done that differently. This is the reason why they don't hear me. Some people will alienate you anyway. Sometimes it's got nothing to do with what you do, you know. I don't think everybody has got to like me or whatever. I mean, you make an effort. If it doesn't work, my God, there's too many things in this world to do, you know. And the thing is, criticize or disrupt sounds negative, you know. But I hear what you mean. It's perhaps critique or whatever, but yeah, not everyone will find that comfortable. I wouldn't expect that even as I critique them. But if you choose that route, you've got to carry the burden.
Yes, and I think some of the points that you made in the beginning about cementing yourself definitely would help you. Yes. Because, you know, if they can't fault your work, they'll fault your dress. Yeah. And that's when you know, and they'll know that they're being petty about you, criticizing you. Piwa says, I see a gap being created over time when it comes to career opportunities, focusing on women students specifically, especially with STEM industries, given fourth industrial revolution or artificial intelligence, as a lot of Black children who come from disadvantaged backgrounds drop STEM subjects due to lack of resources at their school. That's creating a gap in terms of tertiary pipeline. This will result in a skills gap in the future and further unemployment. In your space, how would you propose we create a culture that motivates our youth to take up subjects so that the future belongs to them? Such a great question, Piwa.
Yeah.
Such a great.
You see, this is where I think each one of us must take responsibility. You know, there's this tendency that I see this problem in my township, someone must come and solve it. Get on your feet and go and solve it. It's your township. Go and do it. I mean, I'm going to say that as a start, right? I think if all of us professionals, or not even all, if some of us just went to the townships on Saturdays, offered free maths lessons, that will go a long way for your township, but for many others if each one of us does it. And I just think we as Black people think someone else is going to solve the problem for us. We are very good at immediately saying government must do this, and then it doesn't do it, and then the thing continues and continues. So I would say that, I mean, my township matters to me, and people have different passions. I mean, there are things that I know I can teach and I want to do it. There's an area that bothers me, I get on and do it. I mean, many of you would know that I do sessions on Sundays, every Sunday. Nobody pays me. And it's simply because I care about postgraduate students. I know that many Black people don't understand the academic area. They are young academics, whatever. And I go online and I do it, right? It takes my Sunday. I can't just be going at a party on a Sunday because I have this 4 to 5 thing. And I often think, why is it that no other Black person is coming on to teach history or to teach geography or to teach economics online? Why? Why are all these educated people just sitting and not do it? We can do that. In the same way, we can. I know that not every township kid has got data, but we can go into the township and teach in the class. I mean, every year I spend a few days in Garankuwa. There's a young man who runs a project with unemployed youth in my township. I send her money for airtime every month. He didn't ask me. I'm just doing it. And then every year I go and spend time with them, offer my services for free. I don't have to do it. And I'm not saying it's even better. I mean, I fly from Cape Town to Garankuwa and go and do that. And I'm just thinking, if each one of us did something for our township, it would be, I mean, yeah, I think we should take matters into our hands in that way, rather than, and, you know, yeah, I think we should do that. Then maybe we'll have fewer students dropping STEM subjects.
No, that's a very good point. I think, so what you're saying is that, I mean, oftentimes when we see a problem, if you see a problem, find a way to also solve it at the same time. Also, this one, I think, is also a huge problem that we face as a society. So I think, yes, challenge accepted to us and everyone that's here. But I think there's also a wider problem around subject choice and the motivation for kids to select it and the resources that they have in being able to achieve good marks in these subjects in some of the schools that we see in the township. But challenge accepted that it's up to us also to see what we can do about it. Grace Brown says, Prof, when you speak about belonging and also the remnants of apartheid and segregation, I think something we are still perpetuating today is the continued segregation of Black and colored people. Should this still exist?
This question is so problematic, especially for me being in Cape Town. You know, I mean, it's an interesting phenomenon. I mean, apartheid has created such a bad legacy. I mean, you know it's bad. You know, when I got to Cape Town and I was still DVC and many people didn't know me, and I went to Heating Campus and I tried to get onto to drive in, and I see a security guard who's darker than I am, has got a wider nose than I am and whatever. And I go, Molo! Oh, he got angry with me. He got very angry. Quickly switched to Afrikaans and started calling me to, who do I think I am, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, oh, by the way, I'm in Cape Town. Never assume. I mean, here I am. I'm more educated than he is. I'm higher, I'm driving, I'm lighter, I'm whatever. And he gets angry with me. He doesn't even tell me nicely, oh, no, I don't speak Xhosa. Right. Now, and I thought it is not his fault, you know. Apartheid has done such a good job with us. To say to us, you are superior because you are colored. Actually, he should reject the label colored. He should reject it because these are apartheid categorizations. And apartheid has imposed them on us. We own them. Of course, we've got to use them to help us to redress, but not to separate ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, and I think Cape Town is a very interesting place because of that. I mean, I haven't seen it that big in Gauteng, but in Cape Town it's a very interesting place. So I think it's something that we should do away with. And I know that there's a movement, non-racial people, and so on and so forth. And I always say that's important. We're working towards non-racialization, but when we want to redress, we do want to see race so that we know who we are supporting. Otherwise, we might end up sabotaging these very people who didn't get support in the past. So we're working towards that, but I don't think they should exist. I think at some stage it's got to become, especially between colored and black, because half the time you can't even tell who's colored, who's black.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were all challenged at the same time. So now thinking that you're better than me while we are in the same position doesn't help you. We've got a contribution from KG that says that this is such a fascinating conversation. I'm enjoying learning at the same time. I like your demeanor, Professor. May you continue to inspire. For me, culture of belonging starts with self. We need to own our space, knowing who we are, what values subscribe to, in order for one to know where you belong or not. Know yourself and don't compromise your value and who you are, your values and who you are. Thank you, KG, for that contribution. There's a question that Molohadi, as well as Grace, I'm going to just group them together because they speak about the same thing. It was said earlier on that to make a difference or transform the spaces we work in, we need men as allies. How do we also begin to entrench this strength and allyship amongst women? How do we establish solid connections as women to work with, fight for, support, and uplift one another, such that even in the absence of men allies, we remain strong? And that will be the last question that I will take for the evening. Prof and I will wrap up the conversation before we hand over to Mpho to close. So Prof, if you want to maybe touch on the from Molohadi.
Yeah, I think allyship between women is key. But I don't want to be unrealistic and think every woman is going to like.
Women, yes, correct.
You know, I mean, there'll be people who won't like you or want to be allies with you for this or that other reason. But of course, we've got to, as much as we can, build allies, develop allies, have allies that are women, because they are much stronger. I mean, I have to tell you that I depend on Black women. I mean, I promise you, I depend on Black women in a big way. You know, I see the support of Black women, but even then, I know that not all of them will do that. And perhaps it starts with one trying to be that woman, you know, me trying to be that woman, knowing that even as I try to be that woman, some women will reject me.
Yeah.
But I will always try to be that woman. And someone said recently, I was at this event with women, and this person said, you must never, as a woman, allow yourself to be in a room where a woman is being destroyed in your presence and you participate. And she said, you don't have to be friends. You don't have to be friends, but you should never allow yourself to participate in the destruction of a woman. If you can help, but don't participate. And I think it's a difficult thing. I mean, I will say, you know, try to be that ally yourself and let the other people reject you rather than you reject them. And when people reject you, I mean, you know, we get rejected, but what can you do? I mean, you move on, you know? but you try first to be that ally. I mean, the truth of the matter, I mean, for me, I don't care how much of a woman you are. If you are toxic, I'm out.
Yeah.
I cannot sacrifice my mental health in that way simply because you're a Black woman. I am out. If you can never be happy with yourself, if you can never congratulate other people, not even me, other people, be happy for them, if you're always complaining, I'm sorry. I mean, you know, yeah. So I mean, and this is where I say I don't want to romanticize the issue of women and thinking that all of them will be the people I want to spend time with or be allies with, or they will also like me. They might not like me either. You know, I understand that. I will try to be an ally. If it doesn't work, I'm out. You know, if it becomes toxic, I'm out. And I understand that they can do the same as well.
Yeah, I like how real you are about these things.
Huh?
I'm saying I like how real you are.
No, you know, that's what it is.
Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, I think that's the one thing I've certainly appreciated in this discussion. So I'm gonna perhaps start from the top, Prof, so that we can leave people with just bullet points and nuggets that they can take away from this discussion. So in the beginning, you talked about a culture of inclusion and understanding, because you talked about the culture of inclusion and what it meant to you. And first of all, being able to define what inclusion and belonging is an important thing as a starting point. And we're in the space that you're in, right? You also spoke about the context of the African community and how we as Africans, how you were raised and how we find belonging in the spaces that we're in, and some of the things that you found there, and some of those things that we can perhaps consider including into the spaces that we're in, such as adopting someone, making sure that someone who doesn't have the resources that they need, you're able to provide for them. You create a sense of community where what you have is not necessarily just for you, but you share it amongst other people as well, and perhaps people that don't have the same resources as yourself. And I think one other point that I got from you is that it doesn't always have to be financial. You don't always have to, it doesn't have to cost you something to be able to make others feel included, right? We touched on diversity, right? And why it is important to have spaces where we find diversity and we create diversity, because, I mean, as an example, when you arrived where you are, people had never met someone like you. Some of the features that you had and some of the things that you had to say and some of the things that you had to do were quite shocking for them. So creating diversity in spaces helps create that belonging. You also said a point about the fact that in some spaces no one held your hand, and so the fact that, you know, we have the ability to hold someone's hand and make them feel welcome, make them feel heard, ask them what they have to say, and ask them for their contribution. Also then helps them feel welcome when you take someone seriously, and make them feel like, you know, you have something to say that's important, and your contribution is quite important. On the point of celebrating people, I think that was quite a huge nugget, where, I mean, celebrating someone is celebrating someone. So you don't have to celebrate people in categories and put other people higher up than others. When you celebrate people, good is good. And you recognize people for who they are and not for the position that they come with. Also, when you talked about the being able to challenge spaces. You spoke about being unfaultable as a person, making sure that you first cement yourself before you try perhaps to rattle the cage and push back a lot. So it's also about choosing your battles and understanding which one is the one that you're willing to fight and perhaps die for. The one that you want to change as a person. And you also said that be resourceful as a person, so that you are indispensable and you are needed, but also don't let people bully you around because of who you are, because you're a woman, because you're Black. You got to be able to talk up, speak up in specific spaces. The point about allies, and men being allies, I think was an important one, but also the important thing about women being allies to women as well, and women supporting other women, I think was quite an important point. There's other points that I wasn't able to jot down during the conversation that I think other people have captured, but I tried to capture and sum up some of the things that we spoke about around creating a culture of belonging for spaces that we find ourselves in. Is there anything else, Prof, from an insights perspective that you would like to end with in this discussion?
I think we should end where we ended. Be that woman. Be that woman that you want to relate with. The ideal woman that you want to make you feel that you belong. Be that woman. If all of us become that woman, then things will be much better, you know.
Yeah.
And also remember how often you forgive men, and somehow you can never forgive Black women. You know, how many things you let slide if you have a man leader, and how much you will not let it slide if it's a man. So be that woman. I want to be that woman.
Well, thank you so much. I think that this has been so insightful and so challenging for me, even mentally. And I think some of us have taken that challenge to be the change that you see. That culture begins with you. And doesn't matter where you are in an organization, you are able to have influence, whether big or small. And I guess the higher up you get, the more influence and the more deliberate actions you should take to create that culture of belonging.
Yep. But the tougher it's going to be. Don't think it's going to be easy. The higher you go, the more expectation, and the bigger the devil, the more vicious the devil.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Prof. I really appreciate your time. May you continue to do the good work that you do and continue being as authentic and being the teacher that you are, and all the best for your future endeavors and changing the institution to become the institution that you see it becoming. And yeah, so I'm going to hand over to Nozizwe Songesi to do the official closing. So if you can still stay on the line.
Thanks, Thokozile.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you, Prof, for your presence this evening. Thank you for the insight that you have given us. Indeed, when we will live with a theme that get involved, be that woman. You have shared so much insight that, you know, we often look at you from a distance and we're realizing that the very same challenges that you are facing, you are also experiencing. So there was that comforting element that, okay, I'm on the right track. I just need to take a breather, meditate, pray, and get my energy back. So thank you. On behalf of Women Desk, we want to appreciate you. Thank you very much for spending 2 hours with us. It was very insightful indeed. And we would like to encourage each and everyone here to say, adopt one child. Yeah. And it starts small by buying a pair of shoes. by helping with the homework, by assisting with the little that you can. So that's how you start getting involved until you build the momentum that you need. So with that one, thank you very much. I would like to thank Thokozile for the wonderful facilitation that she did, and Mpomoseki as well, our BMF Gauteng chairperson, for the wonderful welcome that she also did. Our members for joining the session, and who spent 2 hours with us. Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing your contribution. Indeed, we are one step ahead from where we want to be as women, one step at a time. And then on that note, we want to remind you of our event tomorrow, which is career development in the midst of digitalization. So on that note, thank you very much and enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.